Picture a family in Columbus, Ohio. 2 parents, 2 kids, a dog named something stupid like Biscuit. They own their home, both parents work, they take 1 vacation a year, usually somewhere with a water park. They have a retirement account. Not a great one, but one that exists. Their kids go to public school and play travel soccer on weekends. By every cultural definition of the word, they are middle class. Now, here is what that life actually costs. Mortgage, $2,200 a month. 2 cars, insurance included, $900. Groceries for a family of 4, over $1,000. Health insurance premiums, assuming their employer covers 60%, $480. Utilities, internet, streaming services, $350. Childcare or after-school programs, $600. Retirement contributions just to stay on track, $600. Gas, clothing, school supplies, the dog's vet bills, another $450. Added up, that is over $7,000 a month. In expenses, before a single emergency, before a broken water heater, before a trip to the ER that costs $2,000 after insurance, before the transmission goes on one of those cars. $7,000 a month means you need to clear roughly $84,000 a year after taxes. And after taxes means a household income of somewhere between $110,000 and $120,000 a year just to live the life that America has spent 70 years calling normal. That number is not middle class in the cultural sense anymore. That number is the new minimum requirement just to hold the thing together. And most American households are nowhere near it. So, how did this happen? And more importantly, how did it happen without most people noticing? Because here's the thing. The term middle class is one of the most emotionally loaded phrases in the American vocabulary. Politicians invoke it constantly. Advertisers sell to it. Economists debate its definition. And yet, nobody ever actually defines it precisely enough to be useful. The federal government does not have an official middle-class income threshold. It does not exist. What we have instead is a loose cultural mythology, a feeling more than a number, built up over decades of television, political speeches, and the vague memory of what your parents' life looked like. And that mythology is now severely out of date. When people think middle class, they are often picturing an economic reality that existed between roughly 1950 and 1980, the post-war boom, the era of the single-income household, the era when a factory worker could own a home, support a family, send kids to college, and retire with a pension. That world is gone. Not declining, gone. What replaced it is a system that kept most of the aesthetic signifiers of middle-class life, the house, the cars, the vacations, while quietly tripling the income requirements to sustain them. And we need to talk about exactly how that happened, because understanding the mechanism is the only way to understand where we are now. Let us start with the 3 biggest costs in any American household budget: housing, healthcare, education. Economists sometimes call these the Big 3. They are the 3 areas where cost growth has most dramatically outpaced wage growth over the past 40 years. And they are also, not coincidentally, the 3 things most central to what middle-class life looks like. Housing first. In 1980, the median home price in America was roughly $68,000. The median household income was around $21,000. That means the average home cost about 3 times the average annual income. Fast forward to 2026, the median home price is approximately $420,000 nationally. The median household income is around $80,000. That is now more than 5 times the annual income. In coastal cities, Los Angeles, New York, Seattle, Miami, the ratio is closer to 10 or 12 to 1. The 30-year mortgage at 7% on a $400,000 home with a reasonable down payment is going to run you around $2,200 to $2,400 a month. In 1980, adjusted for inflation, your parents might have been paying $600. This is not a small shift. This is a structural realignment of what home ownership actually requires. Healthcare next. In 1970, Americans spent roughly 5% of their household income on healthcare. Today, when you include premiums, deductibles, co-pays, and out-of-pocket costs, a middle-income family with employer-sponsored insurance is spending anywhere from 15 to 22% of their income on healthcare. That is a tripling of the share. The United States spends more per capita on healthcare than any other nation on Earth, roughly twice what Germany spends, nearly 3 times what Japan spends, and gets worse average outcomes by most measures. A single unexpected hospitalization for a family with a standard employer health plan can result in out-of-pocket costs of $4,000 to $6,000. That is not a catastrophe scenario. That is a Tuesday. And then, education. If you want your kids to achieve the same economic standing you have, the same thing middle-class parents have always wanted, the price of admission to that outcome has changed dramatically. College tuition has increased over 1,200% since 1980, adjusted for inflation. 1,200%. The inflation on a cheeseburger over the same period was roughly 500%. The average student loan debt for a 2024 graduate is around $40,000, and that is the average, which means millions of people owe significantly more. These 3 costs, housing, healthcare, education, have essentially acted as a hidden tax on the middle class, a tax that increased dramatically, that nobody voted for, and that does not appear on any line item on any pay stub. Now let us get precise about the number. Various economic research institutions have tried to actually define what middle-class income means in practice. The Pew Research Center defines the middle class as households earning between 2/3 and double the national median income. By that math, in 2026, the middle class range runs from roughly $54,000 to about $160,000 a year. That is a very wide band. But that definition measures relative position. It tells you where you stand compared to other Americans. It does not tell you whether you can actually afford the life that being middle class implies. Here's a different approach. Let's build the budget from the expenses up. If you want to own a median-priced home, cover health insurance, run 2 modest vehicles, eat reasonably well, contribute enough to retirement that you won't be working at 74, and afford some version of sending your kids to college, the number for a family of 4 in a median-cost city lands between $100,000 and $120,000 in household income. In a high-cost city, Chicago, Denver, Austin, Boston, you're probably looking at $140,000 to $160,000. In Los Angeles or New York, the math is so broken that we should probably just acknowledge those are separate economies entirely. Now here's where the irony lives. The median household income right now is approximately $80,000, which means that by the budget-based definition of middle class, the one that says you can actually afford the life, most households are short, not a little short, materially short. About 40% of American adults say they could not cover an unexpected $400 expense without going into debt or selling something. $400. And yet these same households are culturally coded as middle class. They own a home or they rent one. They have a car, maybe 2. They look from the outside like the thing America told them they were supposed to be. The gap between what you look like and what is actually happening in your bank account, that gap is the story of the American middle class in 2026. Here is what the official narrative sounds like. Unemployment is near historic lows. Wages have grown in real terms over the past few years. Consumer spending is resilient. The stock market, depending on the month you ask, is either at record highs or close to them. The American economy, by the macro numbers, looks functional. And all of that is technically accurate. Here's what it leaves out. Wage growth over the past decade has been heavily concentrated at the top of the income distribution. The bottom 60% of earners have seen real wage growth that consistently lags behind the growth in the costs we just talked about. In other words, wages went up, but housing went up faster. Healthcare went up faster. Childcare went up faster. The stock market at record highs is a meaningful data point if you own stocks. The top 10% of Americans own roughly 93% of all stocks. For the other 90%, a Dow Jones record is essentially a spectator sport. Homeownership among adults under 45 has declined significantly since 2005. The 30-year-old homeowner with 2 kids and a golden retriever, that image of the middle class, is increasingly a demographic that inherited a down payment, not earned one. There's also something quietly absurd happening with the metrics we use to track all of this. Inflation, as officially measured by the Consumer Price Index, calculates price changes across a broad basket of goods. It includes things like used cars, airline tickets, and furniture, categories that can actually deflate, bringing the overall number down. But for a family in the middle of the income distribution, their personal inflation rate, the thing they actually experience, skews heavily toward housing, healthcare, and food, all of which have inflated aggressively. So, when the Federal Reserve says inflation is running at 3% and the average family says their life feels 20% more expensive than 5 years ago, they are both telling the truth. They are just measuring different things. Here's why this matters beyond the personal financial stress of any individual household. The middle class is not just an economic category, it is the load-bearing wall of the American social contract. Politically, the middle class has historically been the stabilizing force in democratic societies. Economically comfortable enough not to be radicalized by desperation, secure enough to believe the system is worth defending, concerned about the future because they have something to lose. When that group shrinks, when the actual experience of middle-class life requires an income that most people cannot reach, you do not just get personal financial strain, you get political instability. You get a population that stops trusting institutions. You get declining civic participation, declining birth rates, and a broad, diffuse sense that the implicit promise of American life has been broken. That's already happening. Research from organizations across the political spectrum shows dramatic declines in institutional trust over the past 20 years. Trust in the federal government, trust in the media, trust in banks, corporations, and courts. The timing of that decline maps almost perfectly onto the timeline of the middle-class squeeze. This is not coincidence. There's also a compounding problem that rarely gets discussed directly. The policies and mechanisms that drove up these costs, zoning laws that restrict housing supply, a healthcare system built around private profit, a college funding model built on federally subsidized debt, all of these cost drivers have a constituency that benefits from it staying exactly as it is, which makes the problem genuinely hard, not just economically, politically. So where does that leave us? There's a version of this story that ends with solutions, with a 5-point plan, with a reason to feel optimistic if we just do the right things. And there are real policy ideas: zoning reform, healthcare restructuring, changes to higher education financing that economists across the spectrum have discussed seriously for years. But here's what's true right now. In 2026, the income required to live a recognizably middle-class life in most American cities has moved out of reach for a majority of American households. That's not a political statement, that's arithmetic. The cultural image of middle class, the house, the security, the kids who go to college and do a little better than you did, is still being sold by politicians, by advertisers, by the ambient mythology of a country that built its identity around the idea that a decent, stable, ordinary life is available to anyone who works hard enough. And millions of families are running the math every month and coming up short, not because they're failing, because the number changed and nobody updated the brochure. There's a question underneath all of this that I think is worth sitting with. If the income required to be middle class is now something that only the upper third of earners can actually reach, are we still a middle class country? Or are we a country that is deeply attached to the idea of being one? Because those are not the same thing. And the answer to that question probably matters more than any single policy proposal or election cycle or economic forecast. It's a question about what kind of country this actually is versus what kind of country we've decided to believe it is. Those two things have been drifting apart for a long time. The gap is no longer easy to ignore.